Hey, what's up, everybody? It's fluxwithit.com, and today I'm checking out Eiosis' AirEQ Premium by Fabrice Gabriel. Now, he's fairly well known for having done some plugins for Steven Slate, and this is essentially, it's what you would think. You know, it's a parametric EQ, and I thought to myself, you know, do I really need another EQ? And what about this EQ would make me want to use it over any of the other EQs that I already have? I've got some pretty spectacular ones out there already. But what it really comes down to with this EQ is that it's musical. And when you say musical, it almost sounds like a gimmicky term. And, you know, you think to yourself, oh, well, you know, anything's musical, right? Well, the way that this is laid out, it honestly feels like it was designed with ears in mind as opposed to just raw mathematics. And the way that you can sculpt and move around your bands and get the sound that you want out of this, it really does kind of feel like an instrument. So let's jump right into it and take a look at what we've got. First, on the left-hand side here, we have the character knob. Now, this character fader will switch us between water, neutral, and fire. Okay, now this is the global control, and you'll see that the knobs have kind of a bluish purple hue to them, and so we've got blue, purple, and we've got a reddish orange hue over here, and that corresponds to what the character is. So we can do global or we can do individual. Now when we do individual, we can just shift click on our cue and drag up and down, and we can go between fire and drag all the way down and get water. And you can see how the color of the knob will change as I go between them. This basically will change you between a sharper response and a more smooth, transparent response. When I first heard about it, I thought, oh, well, it's just going to be, you know, linear versus exponential or something like that. I have to say that after actually playing with it, it's more than just that. You can actually hear the way it smoothed things out. It doesn't sound like it's just something that simple. There's definitely more under the hood than that. Now, we have, you know, traditional setup on here. We've got our frequency, our Q, and our gain. And then, of course, up top here, we have different bands that we can select. Something nice about this is that you can actually rename each band to be whatever you like. Now, I'm on the drum bus preset here, and you can, of course, adjust it how you like. But let's say, so instead of, just to mix a track and make it a little bit easier for you to remember what you're doing, let's say you didn't want this to be called snare and body. Let's say we wanted this to be bright snare, and we can just do it like that, and now it's called bright snare, and we can adjust where we want the frequency range to be at and adjust it from there. On the right hand side here, we have our strength fader. Now the strength fader is really cool in that it basically lets you, with no phase issue, dial in the amount of the EQ as an effect. So we can kind of push an EQ harder or softer, which is really quite nice, and you don't have any of the phase issues, you know, with trying to bus it out or do anything like that. The buttons, when they're lit, mean that they're on, and when they're, you know, dim, they're off. So you'll see down here you've got the in and out buttons like you would on any regular hardware. So when it's lit, you know, it's in. When it's not lit, it's off. That's, you know, pretty standard stuff here. Let's take a listen to what we've got going on. Now the earth, this is essentially going to use phase alignment and the low end so that it doesn't get too boomy. Air kind of does the same thing, but with breathing. So, you know, if you're mixing hi-hats and whatnot, and you want to work with the air but not have it get too unruly, you can use that. So let's take a listen to what we have. Now something really interesting about this is you'll notice when we adjust the Q, look at the decibel range of the Q as I adjust it. Now you'll notice that it becomes sharper and it spikes up. So there is actually a relationship to gain and the cue tightness at the same time, which is really, it's different than many other EQs, but at the same time it really makes sense, and it makes it really easy to kind of focus in on what you're doing. Another nice feature about this is that you can quickly demo a sound. So if you tend to work in a way where you boost the cue and sweep the range to try to find problematic frequencies or sounds, you can do that really quickly on this by shift clicking. So shift clicking on a frequency. So let's take a listen. So what it does is it will just give you a narrow cue and boost it up so that it's like a magnifying glass on your sound, which is really, really handy. Another nice feature about that is when we shift click and adjust the the character of each band. Let's listen to how that affects that magnifying glass as well. So we're going to take this and so you can instantly see that there's a massive difference between the fire and the water. What's also really nice about this, let's go ahead, I'm just going to kind of go back to regular settings here, is so we do of course have our analyzer up top here, and it's a very nice kind of easy to read display. You can switch this between note mode as well, so if you want to see what frequency each note is, you can see down below here on this sub band, you can see I can scroll through and just see exactly which note I'm on, which is quite handy. And then of course, if we do this and I turn the EQ on, you'll see exactly how I'm shaping this EQ. Now I'm going to turn these bands on. Okay. And when you see that, as soon as I do this, you'll start to see how the EQ is shaped all the way across the entire EQ range. So if I boost here, say I cut here, say I boost here, let's say adjust this to fire, or I could come back down to water, and then play with it as such. Of course, we do have our input gain and our output gain here as well. And so it's just super fast to kind of get the feel of what you're doing with this. Now, the reason why I'm using it in Maschine is I wanted to show how it maps across on the Maschine knobs. Now, and a nice thing about the way that it maps out on Maschine is everything is really laid out quite well. So it just pulls right up. You can bypass the entire EQ. You can drop that down. You can go ahead and do your mid-side. So you can do left-right stereo. You can do mid-side. You can adjust the global character right here. You know, and this is just the first set of knobs. Then you have your input gain. We've got our phase reverse. You know, we can go through and adjust phase per channel. We can turn our earth on and off. And then we can get into our band selections. And when we're in our band selections, you can even do the per band character right on Maschine without any kind of extra buttons or anything like that. It lets us get right to it. And you can see how it adjusts the curve of that cue right there. You know, it's going from that smooth, more transparent look to that sharp, you know, bright cue. And it makes it, you know, just very, very intuitive to use. So I've been using it for just a couple days now and just getting to know it. And I'm finding that, you know, as an EQ, it's just very to the point. You don't feel like you're doing any kind of weird menu diving or anything like that. You don't feel like you're fighting it to learn how to use it. Just in a very short amount of time, able to get up and running on it and get musical results from it. At NAMM last year, they showed a hardware controller that was definitely a premium hardware controller. They did not announce a definite price on it, but it looked like it was, you know, above $1,000, and with motorized knobs and potentiometers. Now that looked fantastic. I would love to have something like that in my studio, but without having that, you still have that musical hands-on control if you're using something like Maschine or even something like the Arturia Keylab that you can quickly have mapped out. Now with Maschine, since you have that scribble strip right there and it automatically maps out, it is just a joy to scroll through and be able to easily get to the bands that you want and adjust it up. So for that alone, I have to say that I'm really impressed with the sound of it. I feel like it doesn't go overboard. It can be subtle and it can also be, you know, in your face. But when it's in your face, it doesn't feel biting. It feels more. It just has a nice, again, gimmick be damned. I'm gonna say it has a nice musical sound to it when you're adjusting the gain, the cue, the frequency, and going through your slopes, and it just really has a very usable character about it. So. Anyway, this is Flux of FluxWithIt.com. Just doing a quick look at Eiosis AirEQ Premium. I highly recommend you check it out if you're in need of a quality new EQ. Peace.